Well, now for the history bit. Seeing that I am in a Baptist church, now, most of you know I am not Baptist by virtue of the fact of how I have expressed myself. But I do have some roots in the Baptist church. And I consider each and every one of you my brothers and my sisters. And I want to say first and foremost that I love every one of you. You're my family. Whether or not you embrace me, I still embrace you. I have to present myself that way because sometimes within some religious traditions and structures, they have a little bit of a difficult time with accepting that which is different than what they are accustomed to. So I try to present myself in a manner that those who are hearing me for the first time would hopefully be willing to embrace. The history bit I'm going to share about has to do with some things regarding the first African Baptist church in Savannah, Georgia. I don't know how many of you may be familiar with that particular church, but this particular church was started in the 1700s. And it was from that particular church that was a springboard for just about all of the other Baptist churches of peoples of African descent. One of the things that I noticed in reading the book, The History of the First African Baptist Church by E.K. Love, was some things that had to do with how they appeared to self-identify themselves. I want to share some things from a number of pages in the book. In page 203, there's something said about the first pastor of that church. His name was Andrew Bryan. And it says, when he was commanded not to preach the gospel, he raised his dusky hand, stained in his own blood, drawn by his vile persecutors, and said with a trembling voice, with that manly heroism and Christian courage, that the grace of God alone can fan into burning eloquence. If you would stop me from preaching, cut my head off. This humble statement from our father in Israel amazed and ashamed his ungodly persecutors. What I wanted to focus on is the last statement that I read, where it says that this man is regarded as a father in Israel. I noticed there were a couple other places that had something to say with regard to how that first African Baptist church apparently identified themselves as being Israel. I want to read another passage. It's in a book, same book, page 42. And it says regarding another pastor who came in the following generation. His name is Andrew C. Marshall. It says Andrew C. Marshall was born a slave. He has traveled over a great part of the United States. He has by industry succeeded in purchasing himself and done many benevolent acts among his color, and has given to different institutions several thousands of dollars. Now listen to this statement. The venerable father in Israel, Andrew C. Marshall. I began also look in the book and notice some things about their particular societies, or we may call them auxiliaries or organizations. And I noticed that they had names such as Daughters of Zion Society, Ladies Zion Watchman Society, Sons of Zion Society. We also had one called the Sons and Daughters of Abraham Society, the Children's Israelite Society, and the Young Ladies Select Branch of the Israelite Society. The point that I wanted to make with respect to this information is that whether we realize it or not, seeing we are a couple hundred years downstream from that time in history, they self-identify themselves as being Israel. I've discovered in much of my studies looking into the migrations of the house of Israel and finding out that in the region where our enslaved African ancestors were taken, the very area that they were taken from was in a region of the people who called themselves the Igbo. Have you ever heard of the Igbo? And they regard themselves as being descendants of Israel. We also discovered that there are maps, and I have copies of that over at the information area. You can grab that at your leisure, where it shows in that area in Nigeria, what is now called Nigeria. They called that particular area of the Slave Coast Kingdom of Judah. And so I just thought I would share that with us today. I believe that when a people become aware of who they are, not only spiritually, but both ethnically, I believe that it does something to them to help them to become more proud of their heritage. And so I want to leave that with you today to let you know, whether you realize it or not, you are more than who you think you are. The Most High be praised.